First of all, I'm really upset that we had to get the dialogue going for you to come here, because due diligence says that it's your responsibility to come into the community first and answer our questions before we have to make a lot of noise for you all to come. That really upsets me as a mother. I have a lot of things to do besides coming here. My concerns are a lot of mistruth. You said I'm not going to see any plume, no smoke, nothing. Your slide even had plumes coming out of it. I see the 2 plants going to St. Simon's, and they're going 24/7. You haven't mentioned the diesel trucks coming in and out of date and the pollution from those, especially if it's a 75-mile radius. You haven't addressed the dioxins. You say 1 gram. Earlier, we were told 4 pounds of dioxins a year. Everyone's giving misinformation. I'd like to see your health study, your environmental health impact study. I want it in my hands. I want to be able to see it so that I have the same information coming from everybody, because everybody is giving us different answers on this. I'm really concerned about the health. My kids have asthma. You mentioned that Lowndes has good air quality. According to the EPA, we're in the 80th percentile of bad air quality. I don't know if that's because the Clyateville plant, I have no idea why. But when I called the EPA, they said, we are already at the 80th percentile of bad air quality. So I'm just frustrated because I'm getting a lot of different answers here.
Yeah, I understand your concerns, and I think they're very legitimate concerns. We can certainly make available to you, all the air permitting data that was put together. I don't believe we did an environmental impact study.
No, but again, Georgia EPD on their website has the submittals that evaluated for the ambient concentrations of the various hazardous air pollutants, and that is available. And that was actually presented I think at a public meeting that was held in April for this very project.
Lindsay Mobley, I think everyone is concerned about the health, and it's very apparent I am as well. But considering, another issue, the south side, putting the development there on the south side as opposed to any other area. Just some little research I've done, similar to redlining, just wondering, I think for the realtor there, you're saying this property wouldn't, supposedly if you put it in a community, say a golf course community, you were saying that it wouldn't deteriorate the value, if I'm understanding you correctly, as it would be in the location it is now?
If I understand your question correctly, you're saying compared to the studies that we've done in other places, where this facility is going to be built, what's going to happen to local property values? Did I understand your question correctly?
I'm just wondering if you're projecting that it would decrease the value as opposed to if you put it in another location, say more north, as opposed to ideally put it in the south, as typically they do, environmental justice programs and all that. They look at the area and they see the impact of, say, minorities, within a 1 mile radius, you got so many non-minorities, and then outside of that radius, 3 or 4, 5 miles out, it picks up more minority populations. But I'm wondering about the values of their properties. Would that decrease or increase their properties from your professional standpoint?
I'll tell you our scope of work. Our scope of work was to take all the work that had been done previously, all the permitting, the location, where it is, not to consider any other locations, and for us to give our professional opinion on what's going to happen to property values in the future. And it's our professional opinion, there will be no impact on property values.
I have a quick question. Question over there regarding you guys coming in and looking at the south end of the community and making some economic advantage for your stockholders and your board, and rightfully so for the numerous investment. But within those south side development, you have some of the lower income people in this community. And I think it would behoove you to look at possibly looking at, I'm a contractor myself, surely, but beyond me and the other taxpayers in here and the abatements you guys are going to receive and the opportunities if it gets passed. As this gentleman said, setting up some particular type goal is possible for these low-income residents, white, black. It's a lot of low-income whites, blacks, all in this area. And I think if you look at how you can devise something so fair play can exist because some of these larger companies here, you know, you call the Langdale's name, surely none of us can compete with some of those kind of guys, but how can you get it down and level the playing field? So I think it would behoove your board, Mr. President, Vice President, to look at some of those measures. Some of the big top fortune companies have looked at ways of, you know, diversifying and looking at opportunities.
No, that's a really good point, and I think as we move forward, we're going to work with the people in the community to try and be as fair as we can and to give people every advantage that's possible. Now, get back to your original question as to why we put the plant where it is, and there's only, you know, there's really two basic reasons. The transmission connection is right there, but the bigger reason is it's right next door to the wastewater treatment plant, which was already there. And so the advantage of being able to get the water that otherwise is being wasted and going out into Mud Creek and using that water for our supply, as well as being able to help the city by burning the sludge that's already being produced by the wastewater treatment plant and having to go to landfill. That's the real reason.
Yes, I'm John Quarterman. I don't live in a city. I live up in the north end of the county, and I grow pine trees for a living. And when I first heard about this, I thought, great, green energy and a market for my pine trees. However, from talking to Brad Lofton and Alan Ricketts, I changed my opinion. You mentioned earlier that the application for the air quality permit, you may not be aware that that's been available on the web through the Lowndes Area Knowledge Exchange since February of this year. And the previous questioner had seen it before the air quality hearing, so that's not an answer to her question. As far as an environmental impact statement, at that air quality hearing, someone asked if an environmental impact statement would be produced, and the fellow from EPD said no, it would not. Video of the entire hearing is available on Vimeo. You can find it through the Lowndes Area Knowledge Exchange, so in case you want to catch up on what went on before here. And I would like to thank Brad Lofton for when I last sat through one of these sessions at their office in the summer. I asked, was there a study of where the wood would come from? And at the time there wasn't. Now there is. Thank you. Now I have some questions about that study. Where is it available on the web so we can all see it? That's the first question.
Second, quick, please.
This was produced for Sterling Planet as a contract, so they were our customer, and we don't post that on the web, but
right, and I
that
think
would be up to Sterling
at some point it will be, but at this point in time, you know, while the project is being developed, and we have a certain, you know, there are competitive and proprietary issues, I think, that have to be considered.
Is this
Question 2.
Is this, yeah, okay, so it's not really available, so it doesn't do us any good. Question number 2. At the air quality hearing, someone, I believe it was the manager of the plant, said that Georgia Power wasn't interested in buying the power from the plant. And since then, I've talked to someone highly placed at Colquitt Electric. Those are the 2 power companies that operate hereabouts. And he says that Colquitt Electric's not interested in buying the power for a number of reasons, one of them being it costs 3 times as much as what he gets now. So are we looking at a situation, kind of what we see at Plant Scherer, the country's dirtiest coal plant near Macon, where most of our power currently comes from, where a quarter of that power actually doesn't go to Georgia, it goes to Florida. So we get the emissions and Florida gets the power. Who's going to buy the power from this plant, and is it going to be Florida?
It will be in-state. I'm sorry? We're in negotiations with several of the power companies in-state, okay, including the Green Power EMC.
I'm Joe Clark, Valdosta. I just have a simple question for you. Does each panel member lives near a biomass plant?
I don't think we know Furman does.
I also recognize that, Dr. Clifford, you said your house was for sale. Is that the reason it's for sale?
I'm sorry? Is that the reason it's for sale? That's funny.
Good evening, and I'm glad that you guys are here tonight to, so that we can get both sides of the story. There are 2 sides to a story. There's the lie and then there's the truth. I'm Phyllis Starworth, the first vice president of the NAACP. And my concern is that most of these plants are located and less affluent communities. This particular plant is going to be located in an environmental community that the EPA has deemed as environmental justice community. And I would like to know if any of you all were aware that the community in which you're bringing this plant of mass destruction into is that it's a environmental justice community. You talked about the gentleman, Mr. Limpcomb, was stating that there wouldn't be, the residents there is not that far, but there are 3 schools, in case you didn't know, 7 large churches that is located, and then we have 2 large apartment complexes, and then we have a retirement home near, and we're gravely concerned. Now, I'm not against green energy, but I am against jobs versus death. And I have children, infant mortality rate going up. And maybe you all have not considered that. But when we start making plans for our city concerning Mr. Lofton and the city council and the commissioners, try planning with us in mind. Plan with our communities in mind. Because we are human too, unless you all have deemed us the 1/3 again, I don't know.
And I think, you know, your point's well taken, although I would take exception to the plant of mass destruction definition. But we will work with you. We will consider your feelings. We will consider your property values. We will consider everything in the neighborhood. As I mentioned before, the only reason the plant is where it is, it's already in an industrial area and right next door to a wastewater treatment plant. There was no intention of trying to put it where it would cause any harm to anyone.
With hazardous chemicals that can destroy the communities. And so it's been deemed that that's the kind of community it is, to bring such a large plant into a community that could potentially have that high rate of hazardous destruction to it.
Who defines that, or who designates it as such?
The EPA. And if you guys have researched or really did the due diligence that you were supposed to have done, then you should know the definition of the environmental justice communities. I would have considered that would have been your top thing to consider, to look into, to make sure that you're not appropriating, hazardous destruction in communities.
Yeah, and I guess the fact that, I guess there seems to be a little bit of a contradiction in our thinking, in that we do not feel that, or it's not a matter of just feeling. It is not a hazardous facility, and therefore we should not come under that definition.